Hey everybody. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. It's going to seem a little bizarre to you at first, but stick with me because I think you're going to enjoy this video. I like going to yard sales, thrift stores, and garage sales, and I spent a whole 10 cents on a book called A Psychology for Preaching. Wait till you hear what's in this book. Shalom everybody and welcome to Beit Tefillah. Like I said, I bought this book, A Psychology of Preaching. I bought it at a thrift store for 10 cents a couple years ago. And this was a few years after we had come into the Torah and quite a few years after we left the Christian church. Some people might say, why would you even waste your time reading a book like that? Well, to be honest, I like to find out what makes people tick and why people do what they do. Once I saw the truth, once I came out of churchianity, I was kind of fascinated with how is it that other people can't see what we see? So I figured I would look back a little bit and do some research on this whole mystery of this whole veil issue. Why did some of us sit for so many years in church and just deal with that? So this book is going to give some insights to that about why we probably did what we did. And I think this is going to be interesting. I'm not going to bore you with huge, vast chunks of reading this book, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of insight that most people wouldn't know unless, of course, they were a preacher and they were studying about how to mesmerize a congregation or something like that, okay? So let's get in. Let me turn my light on here so I can see what I'm doing. In the preface of this book, it states, the purpose of a sermon is to come to grips with the real problems of real people. Now, I might propose to you that real people have real problems because they have chosen real curses instead of blessings because they don't obey the word of Elohim, because they sit in church and they take their pastor's word for it. Okay? So, let's start reading a few things in this book and we'll see why people do what they do. We're going to be doing direct quotes from this book, okay? All right, here's the first one. An effective sermon is in real sense a dialogue. To be sure, the congregation cannot talk back, but, as the author says, in any relationship where there is no chance to talk back, there must be created a special atmosphere where people can feel back. Moreover, it is a secret of the preacher's art to know by clairvoyant intuition what they are thinking and feeling back. Well, that's kind of spooky. Clairvoyant intuition. It sounds something like witchcraft. It's just real spooky and kind of creepy to me. Okay, let's do another one. This will build up a little bit. This will be interesting, I promise you that. Okay. Here's the next one. Direct, purposeful experience is most effective, for it involves most of the person. Contrived experiences come next, and then follow dramatic participation, demonstrations, field trips, exhibits, motion pictures, still pictures with recordings, visual symbols, and last of all, the medium the preacher uses, that is, of verbal symbols. It's hard for me to read some of this without laughing because I think we did that in the 3rd grade, but isn't that crazy? Field trips. Okay. Oh, let's go to the fire department and get our little red fire engine hat. Never mind. Okay. Now, let's do another one. Okay. I only went through probably a quarter of this book before I couldn't take it anymore. Okay. A successful salesman wants to sell his product. He is interested in the customer because he must relate the potential buyer to the product. He studies his approach because he knows how important it is to get his toe in the door. The preacher who is successful is always seeking a conviction. He cannot get it until he can at least get all of his intellectual toe into the door of the mind of his listener. The opening sentences of a sermon can best serve their purpose if the preacher deliberately and skillfully makes the hearer feel that he is involved. So this is about drawing the people in, getting them involved, okay? I guess maybe reading the Torah and the prophets is too much to ask. You just can't start preaching truth. You got to come up with all this mumbo-jumbo and hocus-pocus to draw the people in by clairvoyance and make them feel involved. Okay. If the preacher has a habit of late preparation and dependence upon old material or the material of others, he will seldom feel that his sense of self-respect that comes with honest effort. He will be an exceptional actor if he does a convincing job in the pulpit. Wow, so these preachers admittedly rely on ear-tickling stuff to be a good actor. Wow, and all instead about talking about the commands of our Creator? Wow, okay. Let's do another one. He is a believer in spiritual power, and because he believes, he lives his belief. This is obviously talking about the pastor here. And because he lives his belief, the people feel the genuineness of his ministry. His power as a mediator is not given him as an act of ordination. Rather, it is the unconscious compliment that his people pay him when they become convinced that through him, their soul needs can be satisfied. Clearly, this book admits that the people give the preachers their power strictly through their own belief in them. It reminds me of a joke that George Carlin said one day when I heard him say, you know, I have just as much authority as the Pope, just not as many people believe it. Well, I guess if enough people believe that your preacher is a nice guy and if he's not going to lie to you, that's how they get their power, when the people put their trust in this man instead of putting their trust in Elohim. This is why people drive to church every Sunday morning and sit through this ear-tickling service for an hour, listen to nothing but nonsense that is no way pleasing to Elohim. Okay, the stooge is standing up there prattling about everything under the sun, except telling them how they can come into a covenant and obey our Creator. They figure that since their preacher is a halfway decent guy, he must know best for them, even though just about everything he's telling them is completely irrelevant. You know, and sure, they read and quote things out of the Bible here and there to give some semblance of spirituality, but as long as these people can shake the pastor's hand at the end of the service and say, good sermon, preacher, and go stand out there in the parking lot and yak with other people and with smiles on their faces, the pastor thinks he did good in feeding his flock. Well, that's another thing that really irritates me too, is, you know what, to these preachers I would say, that's not your flock. I'm going to spare you a lot of details about this, but I'm going to tell you basically what this book does. It does basically two things. Oh, just be a nice guy and just be patient and try to understand the needs of the people. And the other thing this book does is to try to teach the preacher to be some sort of pseudo-psychologist and get a good read on the people to see if they need a good pick-me-up. Or more or less it helps them to cater to crowd mentality of sorts so they can succeed at their job by creating smiling faces at the end of each church service. Let's read another one. The preacher who does not feel that his message is wrought with a consciousness of the anguish of those that have greatly needed him has only partly heard the call to preach. As we drink deeply of the insight and spirit of the words of the Sermon on the Mount, let us not forget those important words and that more important mood. See, it's about setting the mood. It's about feeling the mood of the people. Judging their mood is more important than teaching them truth. Okay, let me read a couple more places here. Now we're going to get into the why. There are basic art forms that stimulate kinesthetic responses within the person. There is the strong influence of architecture, for who can resist the strong upward pull of towering Gothic arches, even though no words are spoken? There is a stimulating effect of music in the many forms in which it is employed in worship, from carillon to organ to blended human voices. There is the rhythmic stimulation of the dance as employed in the stately religious processional. This may be emphasized throughout a service where every act and movement is done with precision and dignity. Now this next paragraph I'm going to read is a little bit heavier, but pay attention to it because it fits with what I just read. This artistic competence is achieved in proportion to the degree of success acquired in meeting basic needs. These needs are so complete an amalgamation of the emotional and the intellectual, the spiritual and the physical, that they can only be satisfied in a situation where the organization as a whole is approached. Often this can happen only when there is an unexamined atmosphere. When too critical or analytic an attitude is allowed to intrude, the mood is broken. In any art, technique, while important, must be secondary to the artistic fulfillment. Do you understand what that's saying? Artistic fulfillment. Do you understand why are there all these huge cathedrals with all these big tall arches and this big dramatic altar with all the curtains and all these wall hangings with all their symbols on them and all the statues of the saints and everything and this loud music and all this marching and procession and singing? People have traded truth for a show. That's what this is all about. It's all for show. It's all about immersing yourself in the experience. And it tells you here, when too critical or analytic an attitude is allowed to intrude, the mood is broken. It's like looking behind that curtain. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Don't break the mood. You're going to spoil the whole show. Wow. It's right here in their own words, in their own instruction manual. Isn't that amazing? Let's read another one. Perhaps most significant of all is the use of congregational singing. Here in poetic form and with simple and dignified melodic line, the basic beliefs of the faith are sung. These ideas are made so simple and direct that persons will accept them without contemplation or evaluation. Excuse me? These ideas are so simple and direct that people accept them without even contemplating them or evaluating them? Talk about blind sheep. Wow. All right, one more sentence for that last part I want to put together there. Art penetrates man's sense and arouses emotions, feelings, the glands, and intellect. It affects his entire past, his rites, his ceremonies, his religion, his morale, and his conduct. Everything we've been reading for the last couple minutes is nothing but all about ear tickling. It's about tickling the senses. It's making you feel something. That's what this is all about. It's about immersing yourself in the experience. It's like going and seeing an IMAX movie, for crying out loud. That's exactly what this is. Wow, dude, did you hear the music? It was like Dolby and the picture was all around me. That's exactly what this is. I'm going to read one more here and that's it. When in the mood of worship, one hears the words of Scripture read, he cannot easily separate himself from the great ideas contained in them, nor from the great tradition that has been nourished on them. The words take on a meaning that speak to him of faith and hope, and the significance of his own life is bound up with the lives of others who have heard and responded to such traditional words. That's about all I can take of that book. Well, I hope this brought a little insight to you on why some of us sat in church for so long. It surely was an eye-opener for me. And this was a different type of video. I've never done one like this before, but it's kind of neat to look back for those of us who have been out of churchianity for so long and figure out why we did that, because we were so immersed in this experience instead of being immersed in the word of Elohim. But I hope this video blessed you. I hope it did. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. Thank you to everybody who has. Thanks for watching, and shalom from all of us here at Beit Tefillah Productions. Have a wonderful day.